Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye election coverage continues. We're in Sheboygan. We're interviewing State Senator Joe Leibham. He's a Republican. He's running in the 6th Congressional District, one of 4 Republican candidates. Joe, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Steve, thanks for being here. I appreciate the efforts of Wisconsin Eye, and thanks for coming to the 6th Congressional District.
Thank you very much. This programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Joe, you're in a 4-way primary.
That's right.
How do you distinguish yourself in your record, given that you've got 3 competitors, sir?
That's right. Well, I'm distinguishing myself by getting myself out in front of as many voters of the 6th Congressional District as possible, knocking on doors, visiting events, attending different community festivals and forums, and talking with the residents of the district, explaining to them who Joe Leibham is, my upbringing, my private sector career, the work that I've done in the legislature to move Wisconsin forward from a financial standpoint, to make Wisconsin a better state for economic development and job creation, my focus on election reform issues and other good issues that are important to the residents of Wisconsin. And I talk positively about what I've done and what I want to do for the residents of the 6th District out in Congress. Again, my goal is to have the voters elect me, not to vote against or for my opponent, but to vote for Joe. And so I'm positively working to help them to understand who I am and what I want to do on their behalf.
Thanks. Put in context one of your radio ads that you stood tall over the last 3 or 4 years, Joe.
Without a doubt. You know, Governor Walker and I and my colleagues in the legislature made commitments to the voters of the 9th Senate District and the state of Wisconsin back in 2010. We said that we would focus on getting our state's fiscal house in order, and we did that in 2011, 2012, and 2013. And as you know, and as the residents of Wisconsin know, that wasn't an easy process. There was a lot of opposition, there was intense intimidation, but we stood firm for the commitment that we made to our voters and to the taxpayers of the state. It was one of the most challenging times that I've ever lived through in political life or public life, but also one of the most rewarding, because we stood firm and stood strong for the taxpayers of Wisconsin. Our state is in a better place because of it. The sky hasn't fallen. We're still providing good government services and programs, and we're being respectful to the taxpayers of Wisconsin.
Did Senator Grothman and Representative Strobel, though, cast the same votes for Act 10, Joe?
Senator Grothman was a colleague of mine in the Joint Finance Committee. Representative Strobel was not yet in the legislature during Act 10.
Thanks for the correction.
Right.
Okay, number 1 issue.
Number 1 issue is focus for the 6th Congressional District is our nation's fiscal situation. I mean, it's a mess out in Washington, D.C. No budgets over the past consecutive legislative sessions, out of control spending, trillions of dollars in debt, $17 trillion in debt. That's unsustainable. And the economic freedom and opportunity in this nation, the ability to provide quality government services, is in doubt, as is the quality of life. And I've got 3 young kids, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. They deserve as great of America, if not a greater America, to grow up in than I have. And that's a doubt right now, and that's why I want to go to Washington and provide the same type of focus and reform like we did in Wisconsin. A lot of people have doubt as to whether or not we can fix our federal government. I've got the hope and the belief that we can, and I want to be a part of that, and that's why I'm running for Congress and want to try to make a change out in Washington.
When I had breakfast with Tom Petri, who you're trying to follow, about a month ago, he made this point, which really surprised me. This district is in the top 5 in terms of manufacturing jobs in the nation.
That's right.
How healthy are businesses that make things in this district?
Well, it's a key part of this district, and they're doing well, but they need a government that works even better with them and as a better partner. And that's what we've done in Wisconsin. That's one of the great prides that I have during my legislative career, is making our government, even quite honestly under Governor Doyle, but now more importantly and more specifically under Governor Walker, we've tried to improve the relationship and the opportunity for businesses to work with government and vice versa, so that they can grow and be successful here. And again, we've had a good track record of that in Wisconsin. That's what we need to do out in Washington as well, in our federal government. Have our government be a partner with the job creators and the businesses, unleash free enterprise so that opportunity can abound in this nation and that people can have that opportunity to work. That's worked for America for over 230 years. It can work for our future, and that's a key focus of what I want to do out in Washington, is to have our government be a good partner. That doesn't mean that there's not a role for government to regulate when appropriate or to work with businesses when necessary, but we should be unleashing free enterprise and making that opportunity opportunity to, open businesses even more possible in America.
What are your thoughts on how to break the gridlock in Washington?
Well, we've got to be willing to work together and to try to find some answers. The American public right now have divided our federal government between the two political parties. I will stand firm on my conservative principles. I'll work to try to lead my colleagues to those conservative principles and answers for the problems that are facing our nation. But in the end, I'm also a realist, and we need to get issues resolved and get some of the problems solved for the people of this nation. So we have to be big enough. Before more importantly than being a Republican, I'm an American, and I want this country to succeed, and I want to fix our federal government because it's failing our nation right now. And so I'll work as hard as I can to convince and lead people to the conservative answers that I believe are right. But in the end, we have to be willing to listen, to be respectful, and find some answers for this nation.
Some Democrats in Washington are raising the specter, and partly to raise money, that GOP candidates and members of Congress like you would be are interested in impeaching President Obama. Are you, as one candidate, do you want to have any part of that dialogue? Does President Obama deserve to be impeached?
Well, that's one of the responsibilities of Congress. If this president or any president were to violate their constitutional oath or responsibilities, if they were to lie to the Congress or to the American public, then the process of impeachment is there. And I think that President Obama is pushing the envelope, and he needs to be more respectful of his executive powers and the separation of powers between the branches of government. And I would work first and foremost to ensure that the president is living within his responsibilities and that he's not encroaching on the congressional legislative branch of government. I've got great respect for that. Again, if there is a clear violation that's happening and that the president is exceeding his constitutional authority, then I think it's the responsibility of the Congress to begin hearings and to investigate whether or not impeachment is practical and necessary.
Has the president committed any impeachable offense so far?
Again, I think it's getting close. And in just the past couple of days, the suggestion where he's going to use his executive authority far too big. We've taken on way too many of those responsibilities at the federal level. And so, on issues of education, on other matters, those should be left to the states. And the government at the federal level should be focused on, those issues as prescribed by the Constitution. And then within those areas, you've got to make our government the most efficient and effective that it can be. And that's not easy to be done, because you got to be willing to think outside of the box, and you got to be willing to take on, some positions that aren't necessarily the status quo. Again, that was one of the best parts of being in the legislature over the past 4 years, is we kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. And you know what? The sky hasn't fallen. Our government is still providing good services, focused services, and prioritized for services to the citizens of Wisconsin. And that's, again, what we need to do out in Washington.
Does it mean telling people you may not get as many benefits from the federal government?
It does, yes. Yeah, I think we've allowed
smaller social security checks?
Well, I think, in all those areas, again,
coverage?
We have to accept the reality that our federal government has become far too big, far too intrusive in our individual lives and responsibilities. And I'm a strong promoter for individual responsibility. We've got government there to help when necessary, but we've grown this government far too big. And it's not only, struggling and suffocating us economically, but from a freedom standpoint as well. I mean, America is about individual freedom and liberty. And when more and more of your life gets controlled and dictated by government through programs or services, as well intended as it may be, that takes away individual liberty. And we've got to get back to that self-responsibility and independence that made this country great, with a government that's there to help when necessary. But in all those areas, again, I would support that. And I think most citizens would understand that as well, if we explained that, again, economically, from a sustainable standpoint, that this doesn't work. And really, it's not in their best interest to have their government so controlling of their lives. That's the type of America that I would work to try to move forward.
When you say everything's on the table, does that include the Pentagon?
Well, sure. Even in national defense, we've got areas that are not efficient, and we're not kind of focusing on our right priorities and responsibilities. Foreign aid to some countries around the world that have no respect and no consideration for the work that we're trying to do to help them. And so I believe all those areas, we need to be working to make our military the most efficient and effective military in the world. But there are a number of areas and programs within the military that can be scaled back and changed. And again, it's the lack of political will or the interests that are tied to those that have kind of gotten us stuck in some of those ruts. But we got to be focused on how we can provide the greatest bang for the buck in all government programs and services, and the military is included in that.
Well, what lessons have we learned after 12 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of when to commit American soldiers and resources?
Well, again, I firmly believe that America has a unique role in this world, and we have helped promote and provide liberty and freedoms to citizens across this world that probably don't even understand or respect what we've done to help them to be better people and to just achieve that opportunity of liberty and freedom. But with that, you have to have defined and focused missions. First and foremost, our military and our foreign policy should be focused on protecting the economic and security interests of the United States of America. And those are diverse across the world. I mean, a strong America and strong partners across the world are in our best economic and security interests. And so I support a strong American influence across the globe. But with that, you've got to have reasonable expectations as to what your mission and your plan is. And I think that in some cases, there's been a mixed plan under the past two administrations in regard to Iraq, in regard to Afghanistan. And politics have entered into that more than kind of having a best policy for providing a good game plan and end result as to how we deal with those situations in those parts of the world. And foreign policy should trump politics in some ways, especially when it comes to our national security interests. And again, I think that those two areas specifically have got caught more into politics than they have in good military and economic kind of strategies.
Congress is on the verge of approving a Band-Aid plan to continue spending on highways and other transportation programs.
Right.
Do you have any ideas on a better long-range solutions than this temporary Band-Aid, sir?
Well, we got to get to a long-range plan in all areas of our federal government. I mean, this continued process of just passing continuing resolutions is disrespectful to the taxpayers of this country and to the services in which these budgets are supposed to be managing. And so in the area of transportation, I'd focus first and foremost on getting our National Department of Transportation focused on its key missions. Just like at the Wisconsin level, I think the DOT has gone far too broad into some secondary and maybe interesting but not top priority issues. And we need to get focused on maintaining and enhancing our key infrastructures for this nation. There are funding challenges there, and I'm open to looking at tolling opportunities, and those types of opportunities. But really, my main focus would be trying to drive down the costs and to rein in the scope of the Department of Transportation.
Would you consider raising the federal gas tax, Senator?
I'm not convinced, just like I'm not convinced at the federal level that our problems are that we're not taxing too much, we're spending too much, and or that we're not taxing too little, we're spending too much in all areas of government, and I think that's true within the Department of Transportation as well.
The Edward Snowden leaks, what did you learn? Do you think the NSA engaged in illegal data collection practices on citizens like you and I? Senator?
Well, it would be good to know that and to understand that, and that's why investigations have to be moving forward. That's why the American public and the president and the federal government need to be honest with us in regard to what happened there. I understand that there is a role for government surveillance in regard to individuals that are trying to do harm to our nation or to our fellow citizens, but I have a great deal of respect for our individual privacy. That's one of the key, foundational blocks of American society, and our federal government should not be intervening or, monitoring or following free, legal, law-abiding citizens in this nation.
Do you think Snowden was a traitor by making those leaks?
Well, I'm concerned that he maybe didn't take different avenues to be able to get his concerns and his issues known to the government or to representatives of our government, because I think by going international and kind of going to some of those sources that may do harm to our nation, I think there is an aspect there where he was not kind of standing up specifically for America in what he was trying to do.
I'm asking all candidates, do you have any reaction to Judge Crabb's ruling on same-sex marriage?
I support marriage being the union of one man and one woman, and I was proud to help bring that issue to the people of the state of Wisconsin through the constitutional amendment. That's what the people decided in an overwhelming majority, and that's again the definition of marriage that I support.
Questions on energy policy. Do you support the Keystone Pipeline?
I do, and it's a travesty that it's gotten caught up in politics instead of, again, looking at what's in the best energy, economic, and job interests of this nation. And one of the items that I do out in Washington is to work to try to convince the president that, again, it's really in this nation's best interest, regardless of what side of the management or labor or environmentalist or economic interests you are, getting a more sound and United States-based energy policy is key to this nation's economic future, and we need to be able to do that.
President Obama, as you know, has recommended a plan to limit carbon emissions.
Right.
Something you can support, or would it hurt Wisconsin?
No, it will hurt Wisconsin. It will hurt Wisconsin ratepayers. It will hurt Wisconsin's utilities. It will hurt Wisconsin's jobs. It will hurt Wisconsin's economy. Again, we've got great examples where the utilities here in Wisconsin that use coal are investing hundreds of millions of dollars to make their operations more clean and more environmentally sensitive. And they want to do that because they respect our environment as well. But coal is a natural resource that we have available for us here to provide energy, and it should be part of our portfolio. And again, not only is it an example of bad kind of energy policy, but again of an overreach of the president through his executive powers or through the administrative rules to kind of bypass the legislature. And that's probably the most appalling aspect of that, along with a number of other rules that have come out through his agencies. He doesn't have the support in the Congress, even with a Democratic Senate, and yet he's trying to push his will and his way on the people of this nation, and that is even greater concern than the flaw of his energy policy.
Nuclear power, with the Kawani plant going down, the
Yeah, we need to.
in Japan.
Well, but we need to work to promote further opportunities for nuclear power in Wisconsin. I am the Senate author of the bill that would end the moratorium on nuclear power expansion here in Wisconsin, and that's something that I'd promote out in Washington as well. It can be safely and efficiently and in a good cost-effective way be done. And again, I think that we should be growing and encouraging the nuclear presence of energy here in America.
Can I ask you about the Act 10 debate? Did you or your family feel personally threatened? Several times?
Well, sure.
Once?
We had protests in front of our home here in Sheboygan. I had a young 3-month-old daughter at the time. There were times when my wife was home alone when we got threatening protests, intimidating calls. You remember some of the death threats. I mean, there were a couple there that were so specific to, killing my wife and my 3 kids. I've got a pretty thick skin, but I got to tell you that, kind of impacted my wife. But we grew firmer, not only as a family, but as a legislative Republican caucus. And that was one of the best things through that whole experience is that, intimidation and threat doesn't work. I was very open to people talking to me about maybe other ways of doing things in a respectful way. But the threat and the chaos and the intimidation actually kind of grew us stronger in our resolve to get things done. And again, a challenging time, but one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my political life.
Is there any issue that you consider key to your campaign that I haven't asked about? Anything additional? Any other issue you want to bring up now, Senator?
No, I just feel real good. The residents of the 6th Congressional District have an awesome vote to cast in a couple of days. For the first time in over 30 years, we'll be picking a new representative to represent our area out in Washington, D.C. And I will be humbled to earn that opportunity every day that I go to the Capitol in Madison, and every day if I have the honor of going down to Washington, I'll be there to represent the good, hardworking people of the 6th Congressional District, to focus on the issues that are important to them, to make educated and balanced decisions that work to move this country forward. Again, this is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, but our federal government is failing us at this time. I don't want to be a part of failure. So I'll go to Washington to work to improve that situation and to move this nation forward.
And then finally, do you want to highlight any specific differences with your 3 primary opponents on August 12th?
I think my personality, my record, my background, my goals for what I would like to do in Washington is what I'm focused on. And I think there are differences there between my opponents, but we'll let the voters decide that. I'm focused on telling the people and talking to people about who Joe is and what I want to do on their behalf.
Senator, thank you. State Senator Joe Leibham of Sheboygan is a Republican candidate in the 6th Congressional District. The primary is August 12th. Joe, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.